You may have been using Zoom for a while now, or maybe it's brand new to you. Either way, are you comfortable hosting a meeting? Do you know what to do, what to say, how to use the hosting tools? Let me give you some Zoom hosting tips today on Tuesday Tech Training. Hello, and welcome to today's Tuesday Tech Training. I'm Jennifer Stewart, owner of Gateway Productivity. A lot of people are uncomfortable using Zoom and especially hosting meetings on Zoom. They might jump on a Zoom call, but they don't want to lead it. And that's because they're not real familiar with what to do, what to say, those types of things, and how to use the tools available. So today we're going to talk about 4 different tips for hosting Zoom meetings. Tip number 1 is to carefully communicate with your participants in the meeting. What that means is be very upfront about everything that's happening. Tell them how you're going to conduct the meeting. Tell them what to do if the meeting drops for some reason. Tell them what to do if they drop out of the meeting and they need to come back. Whatever you need to communicate to them, do that and do so clearly. So think about beforehand what it is that you need to say. If you plan to have people muted when they come in, that's another piece that you need to communicate to them. That can be very confusing, and I'm sure it's happened to you, where you come into a Zoom meeting and you're muted and you can't say anything and you don't know what's wrong and you might not see it right away. So as the host, it's your job to let people know what's going on. If they're muted when they're coming in, tell them that. Say that over and over as people come into the meeting. Tip number 2 is to get familiar with the tools that are available to you. This really means looking at your toolbar very carefully, and I would suggest doing it on your own in just an empty Zoom meeting at some point to test this out. So here you can see it on the screen. On the far left, you have your typical mute and stop video. I would go through, get familiar with what's available there because that's available also to the participants. Then let's look at the security. Check what your options are. You have the option to lock the meeting, which doesn't let anybody else in. You have the option for the enable waiting room, and that is probably going to be on automatically. This is where someone will come into a waiting room and then you will have to admit them to your meeting. This is a security feature and I highly recommend it. Look into it, play with it, and we'll talk later about ways that you could practice this. Sharing the screen, there's a lot of things about that that can be high risk for security issues, and we're going to be talking about that in our next video next week. And then also spend time looking at the chat, and the security feature on that is, do you want to have it on or off? And that's definitely something to think about. Will your participants need to talk to each other? Will they need to talk to you? That's something you need to decide. And we'll look at us in a second at some of those different options. And lastly, the option to rename themselves. That's pretty self-explanatory, but you do have the option to turn it on and off. So we're looking at all these tools and learning all these features. The next one is the participants, and this will bring up a whole other bar. Usually on the right-hand side, sometimes it'll be a floating box in the middle of the screen. And that you want to click all the buttons, test all the things, see what they do. You as the host will have more options here. That's why I would spend some time getting familiar with that. You may have been on Zoom calls before as a participant, and you may not have seen a lot of the things that will be available. You can actually see here on the right-hand side, there's a drop down for all the ways that you can mute, all the ways that you can have people rename themselves or not. There's a lot of the security features that are built in here as well. They're in a couple different places, but go ahead and look here for the extra things that aren't available in the security area. The next thing you'll want to look at is the chat option. And when you click on that, it'll work just like the participants. It will either pop up on the right-hand side or it'll pop up a little floating box in the middle. You can see it's pretty much empty. That drop down that you're seeing is from the participants area. So it's pretty much an empty box, but always go to the ellipsis. That's the 3 dots, the 3 horizontal dots. go ahead and click on that. That always means that there's more options available to you, and you're going to want to see what those are. And that's true not just in Zoom, but really any program. So that's a tip you can take from here on out. You'll see in this case, it's a lot of the same options that you would get by turning the chat on or off in security. And it's just the different arrangements that you can do. They can just chat with you, they can just chat with each other, they can chat with everyone. There's all different options there. So again, explore those. The next option in the toolbar is sharing the screen. There are lots of things you can do here. I highly recommend going in there, playing around, getting used to it. And we're going to have a whole nother talk about this next week. So I won't go into any more details on that, but definitely spend some time getting used to that and then come back next week and find out more tips on what to do with sharing the screen. Recording is typically only available for the host. So again, play with that, get used to it. If you have a free account, you'll only be able to record to your computer. If you have a paid account, you'll be able to record to your computer or to the cloud, which means Zoom's holding tank, basically. And so that's, if you don't have room on your computer, that's an option for you. The breakout rooms we'll be talking about it in a couple of weeks, a little more in detail. A lot of people don't have these turned on, and that's okay if it's not something you're going to need. I wouldn't even worry about that. The reactions aren't really used by hosts because obviously you want other people to react to what's happening. Although you can react to what other people are saying. That's why they left that in there. So again, spend your time getting used to the tools that are available. That's the big thing about this tip. Spend that time, get in there, play with it, push buttons, have fun with it. Tip number 3 is to know your plan. And what I mean by this is have a plan going into the meeting. So many people will jump into a meeting and they will realize they don't really know what they're doing, or they didn't look at this in advance, or they didn't think about how an in-person meeting is completely different from a virtual meeting. Think about things like when you have a big group of people in a virtual setting, there's really no way to know who's going to speak next. It's a little easier to pick up on that in person. So think about that and how you're going to conduct your meeting. And again, as we said in tip number 1, communicate that with the people there, but really have your plan written out. Know about if you're going to call on people, have them muted and call on them, or if it's a small enough group that you can just have people pitch in. I have found that usually 10 and less in the amount of people is about the most you want to have for just letting people speak out in the open and not calling on them. So just think about that and think about the people that are involved in your meeting and what would work best for them. The next thing to think about in your plan is, what about connectivity issues? So somebody's having an issue getting connected. How much are you going to help them? And that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. What I highly recommend, having been a host many times, is if someone is having problems connecting, usually it's their audio. And typically what I've found is if you can have them go to the tiny little arrow that you see here on the left and go up to test speaker and microphone. Don't worry about all the other pieces. You will probably have something completely different from what you see on the screen right now. Typically your computer will pick up what you need in that case. You need to go to test speaker and microphone. It will take you to this the next one in the middle that says testing speaker. It will play a sound, and you can say yes that you hear it or no that you don't. And that's how it knows to fix something if there's something wrong with the speaker. Now that's what you're hearing, and most people don't have problems with that piece, but then they'll go to the next piece, and that's where it's going to test your microphone. And so here you can see on the third one, testing microphone, speak and pause. Do you hear a replay? So you'll speak and then it'll pick it up and it'll play it back to you. So then you'll know that your microphone is working. This is where magically I have found that many times that just fixes the audio problems. And so this is what I often tell people to do, is just go through this process and somehow it may magically fix it. I've also had people go through this process and then it still didn't work. So in that case, I typically recommend to them that they go out of the meeting and then come back. That probably fixes 90% of the time the issue that this testing the speaker and microphone would not fix. At that point, you need to decide if you need to kind of wash your hands of it and it has to become their problem and you've done what you can. That's typically what I do, because that's about the extent that I can help someone without digging into their computer. And obviously, not everybody can do that. The last piece of your plan would be knowing what you need to do as the host, as far as, are we going to record the meeting? Are we taking notes? Are we doing something in the chat for participation? All of those different things. Think about that in advance. Think about what would be most beneficial for your participants and for you as the host. What would make things move the smoothest? And be sure to write that down, because oftentimes people will start a meeting and it's something they need to record and they won't remember. That's especially an important piece that you want to think about. And do know that, let's say you're doing a workshop and you have a time where people can write down thoughts, or you have a break of some sort in there, whether that's a break where people use the restroom or whether it's a break where they're writing down something. You can actually pause your recording during that time, even if you're sharing the screen. Be sure to find that, figure out how that all works, and again, make that a part of your plan. Our fourth tip today is to practice. And I know you've heard this over and over: practice your speeches, practice your music, whatever it is that you do. It is good to practice, and it's true in this case as well. First, start with a meeting with just yourself. Play around with all those host tools that we've talked about. Play around with what you see versus what you saw as a participant, and just mess around with the screen sharing, all of those different things to figure out where everything is. The next level would be to start a Zoom meeting and invite yourself on your phone as well. And then you'll be able to see how people on the phone will see things differently. And you can also play around with the settings on your phone if you've never done a Zoom call on your phone. Lastly, I would go the next step, which is to invite friends or family or both, and make this a much bigger meeting so that you can really test out all of those things that you created in your plan and all of those things you decided you were going to communicate to the participants. And you can make sure everything comes across clearly and that everyone understands you, and then also that you are able to smoothly find things. And honestly, when I've done this with friends and family, we've all learned things that we didn't know. And so that can be a great place to brainstorm and to play with different buttons and find out how things look different for different people. And it's in a much more comfortable place where you are with your friends or family. Have you had a light bulb moment from this training? If so, please let me know about it in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up or share it with anyone you think could benefit from the information. And be sure to subscribe by clicking the red button below so that you know about future videos. Thank you for joining me, and have a great day.